to President Obama, Secretary Geithner, Madam Pelosi, and all of the socialist econ professors across America.
We're sorry.
Peter Schiff is back on the air.
And this is Peter Schiff at schiffradio.com. Live calls today on Open Line Friday. 855-4SCHIFF is the number to call. But before I go to the phones, there's a couple of topics I wanted to hit. One is there's an article from Bloomberg. I guess it was written by Virginia Postrel, entitled U.S. University Feast on Federal Student Aid. One of my listeners sent me this article early this morning. We're going to be posting that article up on the Europac website if you want to read the entire article. But it's basically an acknowledgement that government guaranteed loans are responsible for driving up the cost of a college tuition. I'm just going to read a little bit from the article. Any serious policy reform has to start by considering a heretical idea. Federal subsidies intended to make college more affordable may have encouraged rapidly rising tuitions. Well, duh. I mean, it's not heretical at all. And then he follows up, it's not as crazy as it might sound. It's not crazy at all. You know, what's crazy is not seeing the link. Anything that the government subsidizes is going to be more expensive. If the government gives you money to buy something, then you're going to pay more for it. If the government makes it easy for students to borrow a bunch of money real cheap, to use that money to bid for college tuitions, they're going to bid the prices higher. If a lot more people are going to college because the government is paying for it, that's more demand. More demand means higher price. I mean, it's very simple. The idea that you would not see this connection is what's so amazing. And in fact, it's par for the course when it comes to government programs. Generally, whatever their intention, the result is the exact opposite. Right? So if the government is intending to make college easier for people to afford by subsidizing loans, they end up making college more expensive. Just like housing, right? Fannie and Freddie were there to make homes more affordable. They ended up making them more expensive, right? That's how the government works, right? Whatever it is, the government has programs designed to eliminate poverty, and you end up getting more poverty. The government has a program designed to reduce unemployment, and the result is more unemployed people. I mean, it's always going to work out that way. As I said, there is no truth in lending laws that apply to truth in legislating. At least if they did, maybe fewer laws would be passed. But of course, since Congress exempts themselves from all the laws that everybody else has to live by, chances are that is not going to happen. Also, I wanted to talk a little bit. President Obama is apparently, I don't know if he's considering doing this or if he's just done it, or they're pushing for this new regulation that would require any company that gets a federal contract, and there are a lot of private companies that do business with the federal government. After all, the federal government is spending so much money that a lot of private companies end up getting involved. And of course, it's a lot of times very corrupt when one party to a transaction is the federal government. But Obama wants to require that any company who is doing business with the government, that 7% of their employees be disabled. Now, the big problem already for the disabled, and again, this is an example of what I just said, ever since the government passed the Americans with Disabilities Act, theoretically to make it easier for the disabled to get jobs, most people don't want to hire the disabled now. People who would have hired the disabled and might have gone out of their way to hire the disabled before the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed, now go out of their way not to hire the disabled. So again, the government passes a law meant to help Americans with disabilities, and the biggest losers are the people with disabilities who now have much higher unemployment rates than they used to have. Now, of course, instead of getting rid of these stupid laws, what does the president do? Well, let's force companies to hire the disabled in order to do business with us. Now, what this is going to do is drive up the costs to these companies. Therefore, American taxpayers are going to end up spending more money on whatever goods or services the government buys on their behalf. So the government is turning its purchasing. Rather than trying to get the best value for the taxpayer dollars, they don't care about that. They want to turn this into a social experiment, and they want to award contracts based on people having a certain number of disabled workers on their workforce. Now, what does that mean? I mean, are companies just going to hire disabled people even though they can't do the job, but because they need them there in order to qualify? Or, are they going to hire somebody who's disabled at the expense of somebody who wasn't disabled? Whatever it is going to adversely affect a company's hiring, so that they end up hiring workers that end up costing them a lot more money. And of course, one of the reasons that a lot of people don't want to hire the disabled is because of all the new protections that they enjoy that makes it so expensive and so risky for firms to hire people with disabilities. So as a result, all of those added costs will now be part of the overhead of these companies that are doing business with the government. And of course, all those added costs will be passed on in the form of higher prices, which the taxpayers will have to eat. Now, of course, I'm reading on the article that, of course, the society or the disabled association, or I forget what their advocacy group is praising this. And the irony of it is they're actually claiming that employers are going to benefit. I mean, listen to this nonsense. Disability advocates, right, praised the proposed rule, saying employers would also benefit. So the government is going to force employers to do something that they're not smart enough to do on their own, and they're going to end up benefiting. Right? Here's what they say. Job seekers with disabilities will have access to more opportunities, says Mark Perello, president of the American Association of People with Disabilities. Federal contractors will experience greater diversity in their workforces and benefit from the contributions that people with disabilities are qualified and eager to make. Now, wait a minute. There's no law preventing employers from hiring disabled. I mean, theoretically, other than the Americans with Disabilities Act that effectively does that. But think about what they're saying. They're saying that employers are just deliberately not hiring people that would really help their bottom line. And when the government forces them to hire people that they're not hiring, they're going to be more profitable. That for some stupid, foolish reason, they are not maximizing their profits. But the government is going to pass a law that's going to cause them to have greater profits than they otherwise would have had. In other words, American employers are too stupid to hire these talented, qualified pool of disabled workers, and that when the government forces them to hire these people that they're stupidly not hiring, lo and behold, they're going to benefit and they're going to make more money. I mean, how can anybody actually believe all of this nonsense? And of course, I am not against the disabled at all. I mean, certainly you're gonna feel badly for somebody who has a disability. It is very unfortunate, and you certainly want people who have disabilities to be able to work. The problem is that employers who were probably perfectly willing to accommodate a disabled employee as best they could, now because of all the ways they can be fined and sued and how risky it is. As I said, I mean, people who would normally go out of their way to hire a disabled person now probably go out of their way not to. Not because they're discriminating, no, because they're acting rationally based on rules and regulations that the government has put in theoretically to help them, but actually hurting them, just like the subsidies for student loans. Anyway, I will be back. We are taking your calls. If anybody else has any experience hiring with the Americans with Disabilities Act, it would be an interesting topic to discuss. We will be right back on SchiffRadio.com.
Well, I toss and turn so every night I'm not used to being alone.
The Peter Schiff Show.
My little girl wouldn't say I do, but I feel so sad and blue.
We now return to the Peter Schiff Show.
Call in now, 855-4-SCHIFF.
That's 855-472-4433.
Rebel Radio, the Peter Schiff Show.
We are back. This is Peter Schiff here at schiffradio.com. One final word on this Americans with Disability Act before I grab the phone calls. I was thinking, I remember a lawsuit that I read about. This is when I was living out in California. And a woman had sued a strip club based on the Americans with Disabilities Act. She claimed that she wanted a job there. She wanted to work as an exotic dancer, stripper. She's in a wheelchair. And apparently, see, this particular strip joint, I guess their deal, their gimmick was they had shower dancing. So they had these elevated podiums that were showers. And the women would dance while the water was coming down from this big, shower. And apparently, these showers were not wheelchair accessible, that she couldn't get her wheelchair up the shower, and she probably couldn't dance in the shower in that wheelchair based on the way it was designed. So she sued them based on the Americans with Disabilities Act because it was discriminating against her because she couldn't dance in her wheelchair and strip under this shower. Now, there are plenty of jobs that people in wheelchairs can do. Any desk job, pretty much, if you're in a wheelchair, it doesn't matter whether you can stand or not. It's fine. But you got to think that, everybody has got to have to know their limitations. Not everybody could be an exotic dancer or stripper. First of all, just because you want to. Maybe you have to look a certain way. If you're, you can't be really overweight either, right? No one is going to come and see, a bunch of overweight strippers. But in a wheelchair, how can you even dance? How do you even strip in a wheelchair? Are people going to pay money to watch somebody in a wheelchair? The whole thing is nonsense, but this company got sued because of this. This is the kind of nonsense that you get when you get all these government laws, and then you open up the Pandora's box of frivolous lawsuits that businesses. Now, who knows? I don't know what happened to this lawsuit. Did they have to write a check to this woman because they discriminated against her? The whole thing is crazy. But it has obviously backfired, and now instead of acknowledging it, the government simply wants to mandate people to hire the disabled. And of course, now under the American Disabilities Act, just about anything is a disability now. There's so many things now that qualify you as being disabled that it's a wonder that employers hire anybody in the United States.